Today I bring you Tales from the Sweet Brook number 4. Today it's going to be about it happened in church events. One of the first churches I pastored was a small country church, and I was speaking about Moses and the burning bush. I said, God said to Moses, take off your feet, for this is holy ground. My kids popped up from their seats. They were half asleep, but they woke up and they said, did you hear what he said? He said, take off your feet. Well, we do make mistakes like that. Another time I said something about they need to make retribution for their sin. I meant restitution. And Norma corrected me later and said, I think you used the wrong word today. I did. Hopefully they didn't follow my advice. Another time I was on a Wednesday night Bible study, and I don't know what happened, but I think I discovered, my kids began to discover for me that my fly was unzipped. Well, fortunately, I wasn't really showing anything, and that's good. But I didn't know how to deal with it, so I decided it was time to pause for prayer. And during prayer, I zipped it up. One Sunday at this first church I pastored, we were having some problems. Several things had gone wrong, and one of them was the organ wouldn't play. And I said, well, surely nothing else can go wrong. I shouldn't have said that. I decided to go ahead and get ready to preach, and my notes were missing. I looked down on the front pew. They weren't there. There was no office at that church. I didn't find it, so I had to preach without notes. Actually, it was a shorter sermon, but everybody seemed to like it a lot better. So it all worked out. I never did find those notes. I don't know what happened to them. Maybe somebody confiscated them. I don't think so, really. But they did disappear. A couple from Michigan visited that first church, and I almost didn't preach that day because it was, we had a group from Greenville College sing that day. But I did preach maybe about 10 or 15 minutes. So I tried to find out who this young couple were. And I asked them questions. Well, we're just passing through, they said. Now, no one passes through Serrano to go anywhere. Serrano is on a blacktop road. It's a great little town on a blacktop road, but it's not on a main highway. So I think there was something fishy about this. So I decided I looked at the guest book, and they assigned they were from Adrian, Michigan. And I said something to Norma on the way home. I wonder what they were there for. She said, I know. She said, they were checking you out. And I had talked to the Southern Michigan superintendent about taking a church there. And sure enough, they were from the Adrian Church. And I looked it up in our church book later and found out they didn't have a parsonage. So I called my sister Ruth in the afternoon, and Ruth happened to be a secretary to the superintendent. Now, Ruth was very careful not to share anything. But I said something to her about, I said, what do you know? I had visitors from Adrian, Michigan today. She said, well, you're getting kind of smart. Are you interested in buying your own home? I said, that's interesting. They don't have a parsonage there, I noticed. And so I discovered where I was being considered for. And we did go there later and found it to be a very good church to pastor. On a spring forward Sunday, I forgot to set my clock forward, and I arrived at the end of Sunday school. I wondered why so many cars were there, and I was supposed to be teaching Sunday school that Sunday, but sure enough, I didn't because I arrived too late, but they all cheered as I walked in. I have an amusing story about an elderly lady in the church who was interested in connecting with an eligible, well-to-do bachelor farmer. So she decided she'd like to write him a letter, but she didn't put her name on it, and she had a friend of hers write the letter for her because she wasn't very good at writing letters. Well, this man got the letter, and he thought that the friend who helped her write it was the one, so she got several dates out of it, and the first lady got no dates at all. I found that to be quite amusing. My parents and my brother and sister-in-law came to visit one Sunday night, and just as I looked out the window as I was finishing up my sermon, guess what? There were my parents and my brother and his wife getting out of the car, coming in, and I had just finished the last sentence of my sermon. Now, what do? Do I start over? And my brother came in and he said, well, I had heard you were short, but this is ridiculous. Well, anyway, so they didn't get to hear me that time. In 1981, we moved to the Adrian Church in Adrian, Michigan to pastor. And I was praying one Sunday, and people had a custom there that they would often bring their, come to the altar at the front of the church, altar rail, and kneel and pray during prayer time. So I was praying for those who were at the altar praying, and I prayed for those with needs in their seats. I didn't think about how that came out. The organist about fell off the bench that day. It was. I guess all the hemorrhoids were healed. I don't know, but anyway, it was kind of a crazy thing. Also, people had a habit of kneeling to pray during church during prayer time, and a friend of mine from one of my parishioners there had a Roman Catholic background, and he said he always knelt facing the cross. He said, "I'm not going to put my nose in the seat where somebody's been sitting." So he was in the center aisle, praying toward the front, kneeling toward the front. I thought that was pretty interesting. While living there in Adrian, we took a trip down to Greenville to visit my family, and on the way, I had a pair of shoes, only one pair with me, and I had laid one of the shoes, I'd taken it off and laid it between the door and the seat. Well, when I opened the door, it fell out, and I wasn't aware it had, and I went on a little farther and realized I only had one shoe. So I decided, what can I do about it? So I decided to go shopping for shoes. And I called back to the McDonald's where I thought I lost it. They said they found it, but somehow when I got back later, they hadn't found it or I lost it. I don't know what happened. But anyway, so we went shopping in a mall in Terre Haute. My kids said, "Dad, which way are you going?" "We're going a different way." Because I decided I'd rather wear one shoe than none, because you don't normally go barefoot in a mall. And if somebody asked me, "Well, where's your shoe?" I was just going to say, "Well, I couldn't get it on," which is true. I couldn't get it on because I didn't have it. Anyway, I did get a pair of shoes and finish that trip. I had an illustration about apples, and I had 10 apples sitting across the pulpit and told them that 3 were to be used for eating, 3 would represent other needs such as clothing, and 3 for like shelter, and the 10th one was to be something to give back to God. So I started eating this 10th apple, and it tasted pretty good. I wasn't really supposed to eat it. I was supposed to give it to God, but I started eating it and ate and ate and ate, but it was a very sour apple, and I could not get the thing down, and so I only ate a couple bites, and I was done. But the idea of the illustration was that sometimes we eat the apple and give the core to God rather than give him something good. We give leftovers. Well, when I got ready to leave that church in 1985, guess what? They presented me with a really little red apple that I could probably eat, so if I did the illustration again. They also presented me with a shoe. So it had to be one shoe to go with the one I lost, or represent the one I lost. They were a fun group of people there. There was a rose on the organ one Sunday, and it was supposed to be for a baby that was born, but it was during the Christmas season when we had all kinds of poinsettias that were in memory of people, and it kind of confused the person up front who was doing the announcements, and he said, "Well, we have this rose given in memory of such and such a baby, and it died." And I looked at him and I said, "It didn't die." There was a couple in the audience that knew the family, said, "No, it didn't die." And fortunately, the family who had the baby weren't there. That was kind of an embarrassing situation, but it was funny, and we laughed about it many times after that. We had some interesting baptisms. I won't mention any names, but one lady lost her wig, and I wasn't supposed to lose it, but it's really hard to baptize a person and keep the wig on a person. We had fun New Year's Eve parties, and we had something called the head. It was a ceramic head that was made by one of my members, and it was supposed to be her boyfriend's head, but I don't really think it represented his head because it was kind of a yellowish green, and it was flat on one side. It was pretty interesting, to say the least. That head used to appear at various times. For instance, it appeared when somebody was, well, my friend Roger was going to be the head of the Department of Health, and so he got the head to be the head of the health. I think he gave it to a man who was always watching the mall, to give him an extra head to watch the mall. I got it for pastor appreciation. It was kept in a Cane's potato chip box, and the potato chip box, whenever we saw that shape of box coming out, we knew the head was going to arrive. I don't know whatever happened to that head. I would like to know the future of it, but who knows? It disappeared, and I haven't seen it since. Another time, on a Labor Day weekend, we were going to go golfing. A bunch of the men were, and the women were back at the house with the children, and the men decided to keep golfing until they had golfed 18 rounds, and when they got back, the ladies were not happy, but we survived that. Then I had a wedding. It took 15 minutes from the light the candles. They kept falling out of the holders, and finally everybody cheered when they got it done. I had a graveside service where a man had committed suicide. That's not a happy event at all, but his family, because his wife had left him, decided to do a graveside service. I didn't know the family, and they asked me they wanted to play a song at the end of the service. So they put their boombox on top of the casket, and they played "He Stopped Loving Her Today" by George Jones. When it came to the final words of that song where it said, "But she came back one more time," they all started hollering, "No, she didn't. No, she didn't. She never came back. She never came back." And I guess I was glad she didn't come back, because that would have been a very embarrassing situation. We had a small group wiener roast at my house later when we moved back to Greenville at my farmhouse, and I was lighting the fire, and I had what was supposed to be kerosene in a kerosene can, and I poured it on the fire to get it going and lit a match, and it poofed up in my face and burnt my beard and singed my hair and my eyebrows. And we had aloe vera that Norma had to doctor me up with, but we went ahead with the wiener roast that night, but I didn't get close to the fire after that. It was burning well, but I didn't get close. When I moved to Vandalia, we had a number of kids that wanted to be baptized. We didn't have a baptistry, so we borrowed a livestock tank from the local Rural King supply. We had 25 or 30 kids that were baptized that day, and it's an event I will never forget. Later, we got a portable baptistry that we could use in our Family Life Center, and that worked out really well. We did a building project in the Family Life Center. The people worked well together and did painting. The only problem was the men chose the colors to paint, and later on we had to repaint because it wasn't the color the ladies liked. So I learned from that, let the ladies choose your colors. And I told my people at Mount Gilead that's what we should do, let the women choose the colors. Every time I moved, I ended up in a wheelchair. That was kind of a tough situation, but it was a good experience because I learned that sometimes you don't realize what people go through that are stuck in a wheelchair, and I became more appreciative of those people. I have thoroughly enjoyed being a pastor. There have been good times and bad times. There have been rough times. There have been times of misunderstanding, but nevertheless, God was with us, and he still carried us through, and I'm really glad I had the experience of pastoring churches. May the Lord be with you today. Good day.